Because the highest purpose of science is the search for knowledge, truth, and a greater understanding of the world around us. That will be my goal as President of the United States.
I think it's terrific that the President is going to Copenhagen. It signals to the world that he is serious and the United States is serious about taking a step toward a final binding agreement.
In Copenhagen, the President will propose the United States cut its greenhouse gas emissions in a range of 17% by 2020.
From the environmental perspective, it's not quite enough to get to where we need to be, but it's a really, really important start.
Still not enough for some. Friends of the Earth called the 17% target weak.
Climategate set to break wide open. New developments today involving those hacked emails from Britain suggesting scientists are fudging data to make their case for global warming. Republican Senator James Inhofe is calling for a full investigation. And he joins me now by phone from Oklahoma. Senator, you've seen these emails at length. Do you believe that the climate scientists are trying to conceal evidence that works against global warming?
Oh, that's been going on a long time, Stuart. In fact, I've talked to Neil about this over the years. 4 years ago, I made a speech on the Senate floor that almost mirrors what has been discovered in the last few days. And that is, I'd been approached for quite a while, many years now, since Kyoto, with really well-known scientists who have said that they were not able to have proper input, and several of them quit the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that started this whole thing. So I think they've been cooking science for a long time.
Cost the American people somewhere between $300 and $400 billion a year. Now that translates to, in my state of Oklahoma, for example, well over $3,000 a tax-paying family in my state of Oklahoma, and you don't get anything for it. In fact, Lisa Jackson, who is the director of the Environmental Protection Agency, even admitted that if we had passed either the Waxman-Markey bill, or the Boxer bill, it wouldn't reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. It is highly controversial that this would perform, that CO2 is the danger that people would like to have you believe it is. To link it with the 5 pollutants that really are pollutants is wrong. And if we were to do that and have policy on, change our policy in the United States, as I say, it'd be the largest tax increase in history, and you don't get anything. Even though they're saying that, oh, well, someday we'll restrict our CO2, they're not going to do it. In fact, they laugh at us and think, yeah, they would love to have the United States of America pass something over here so that when we can't generate electricity here, our jobs would go to China and to India and to Mexico, into the developing world, and they would love to have our jobs there. I mean, China is cranking out almost 3 coal-fired generating plants each week, and that shows you that they have no intention of reducing their CO2. Well, yeah, the IPCC is the group of the United Nations that was kind of self-appointed to do this, to run this show. This is over 10 years ago. And they are the ones who, as the scientists, there's a group of scientists that make recommendations and do evaluations. Then they now go through and eliminate anything that doesn't support their view. So that's just the science, that is the science behind it. And by the way, that is not just me saying it. Everyone agrees with that. That is not a disputable point. Even Lisa Jackson, our administrator of the EPA, has said that it's that science that we relied our policies on.
Do you think or hope that this Climategate scandal is going to change the way science is being done around the world?
I hope it does. I hope it does because, you know, I've talked to so many scientists that they just can't believe that this has been happening over the last 10 years. And we should rely on sound science. Everybody says that, but they don't want to do it. In fact, that's something that Barack Obama during his campaign said, we need to have reliable science. And then he embraces this drummed up science.
Mr. President, I've just heard a socialist colleague over there talking about Greenland and, you know, the ice melting in Greenland. Well, you know, the question I'd like to ask on this subject is, why is Greenland called Greenland? Is it perhaps because Greenland was once green when the world was hotter? Well, it seems that the British people are onto this because a recent opinion poll in the Times newspaper clearly shows that the British people no longer believe in so-called man-made global warming. The British people are very astute, and they're clear that politicians have hijacked the environmentalist agenda. It's been cynically used to raise taxes, to exert control, and now it's being used by the European Union to justify your own existence. This week we've also had the spectacle of one of the leading climate research centres in the UK, which advises the government, being caught altering data and stifling debate. It's an absolute disgrace. So I look forward to Copenhagen, when the political class is sitting round the table, awkwardly failing to mention the giant elephant in the room, which is that the globe has not actually warmed for the past 10 years.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this year, this House passed what is known as cap-and-trade legislation that would place limits on the amount of CO2 that could be emitted into the atmosphere. And the reason given for the need for this legislation is that man-caused global warming poses a very grave threat to the future of our planet. And we have been told that the debate is over. We've been told that the science is uncontrovertible. We've been told that this action must be taken to save our world. Well, Mr. Speaker, a few weeks back, a series of emails from within the world's foremost climate change research facility, the Hadley Climate Research Unit at Britain's University in East Anglia, were either hacked or they were leaked by a disillusioned insider, which has blown away the scientific foundation for the man-made global warming theory. It's being called Climategate. Mr. Speaker, these troubling emails show that some of the most respected and quoted and published scientists have used tricks to manipulate data, refused to release the data that is the foundation for their research, and they've attempted to silence any critics of their hypotheses, and even expressed dismay that they could not explain recent cooling taking place across the globe. And these scientists seem to have allies cooperating with them, including some here in the United States. Mr. Speaker, since the release of these emails, it has become very clear that the science is in fact not settled, that the debate is very much alive, and that the tactics and methods used by the most trusted scientists have in fact very serious problems. I think we need to stop considering climate research as a legitimate peer-reviewed journal. Perhaps we should encourage our colleagues in the climate research community to no longer submit to or cite papers to this journal, unquote. Well, that's absolutely wonderful. Call those who disagree with their hypotheses cranks because they have not been published in peer-reviewed journals, and then when they are, to discredit the journal. In other words, Mr. Speaker, the fix is in. And most troubling of all is the destruction of raw source data that could be used to verify their work. The leader of the CRU for years refused to release source data, and now they claim that the data was lost. You know, it sounds to me like the old elementary school excuse, the dog ate my homework. That excuse didn't work for third graders, and it certainly is unacceptable from scientists who are asking us to totally upend our economy. And even worse, emails exist that suggest that the data wasn't lost, but instructs scientists to destroy data which was subject to Britain's Freedom of Information laws. And that is not just bad science, that is a criminal act. And now we are being asked to radically restructure our economy based largely on the research of these scientists. Mr. Speaker, Congress needs to hold hearings into this matter. We need to investigate these very troubling revelations. If we are to make policy that will so profoundly impact our nation, that policy must be made on fact, not on articles of faith or manipulated data. I yield back.
A potentially major scandal is unfolding after someone released thousands of emails and documents sent between prominent scientists of global warming debate. The New York Times has verified that these emails are legitimate, which wasn't too hard because some of them were written by and to one of their reporters. More on that here in just a second. But first, let's start with the science that has been so settled for all these years. What are these guys saying behind closed doors about their so-called bulletproof consensus? Well, Kevin Tentberth, he's a climatologist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research. He wrote, quote, "The fact is, we can't account for the lack of warming at the moment, and it's a travesty that we can't." Incorrect data, inadequate systems, yeah. Travesty, pretty good word for it. How about Phil Jones, head of the Climatic Research Unit at the University of East Anglia? "I have just completed Mike's nature trick of adding in the real temps to each series for the last 20 years to hide the decline." Yes, He's talking about a trick that another scientist previously used in a peer-reviewed journal to apparently hide the decline in temperatures. Incredible. But it doesn't stop there. How about when scientific journals published material that Jones didn't like? Quote, "I can't see either of these papers being in the next IPCC report. Kevin and I will keep them out somehow, even if we have to redefine what the peer-reviewed literature is," end quote. Think about that next time you hear about, oh, the consensus and the science is settled, and Al Gore is bragging about the peer-reviewed journals. Now, what happens to a peer-reviewed paper when they disagree with what gets published? Quote, "Our only choice is to ignore this paper. They've already achieved what they wanted. But at least they're not intentionally deleting documents or hiding information, right?" Oh, no, they're doing that too. Here's Phil Jones writing Michael Mann, the scientist that came up with that hockey stick graph, that one. He said, "Mike, can you delete any emails you may have had with Keith, REAR4? Keith will do likewise. He's not in at the moment. Minor family crisis. Can you also get email to Gene? Get him to do the same. I don't have his new email address. We'll be getting Casper to do the likewise." Count them. There's Jones, Mike, Keith, Gene, and Casper. Whoever they are, potentially deleting emails, supposedly about supposed science. So why all the secrecy? Well, we find out from another email from Michael Mann about skeptic Stephen McIntyre. "I'm sure you're aware that McIntyre and his ilk realize they no longer need to get their crap published in legitimate journals," you know, the ones they're siphoning. "All they have to do is put it up on their blog, and the contrarian noise machine kicks into gear. Pretty soon Drudge, Rush Limbaugh, and Glenn Beck and their ilk are parroting the claims." So you see, if McIntyre sees the data, he'll find the tricks that are in it to hide the declines. And then crazy people like me might just let you know about it. Oh, the horror. What will happen to cap and trade?
These newly revealed documents proved that scientists made up global warming.
Absolutely. This particular university in England is the main scientific source cited by the UN. And over the last decade, other independent scientists have demanded to see their raw data because it didn't fit with the other raw data that other universities and research facilities had, and they'd always refused. In these emails, they talk about trying to suppress the real data, and they talk about working with government to not release the documents to Freedom of Information Act request. And they discuss in the documents which the scientists that are in trouble have now admitted that these are indeed their emails. They were hacked. They're in the Associated Press admitting that this are their statements. They're not denying it. And in there, the bombshell is revealed that they were trying to manipulate the data, that they knew that since 1961, the Earth began a cooling trend, and that they were cooking the data. And they also talk about how to persecute scientists and other people and get their funding revoked, get them in trouble, get them kicked out of peer-reviewed journals if they tried to file scientific data that disproved that global warming was indeed happening or that it was man-made. So this is a giant scandal. This is Climategate.
And so why would they do that? I mean, why would they essentially make up global warming?
Well, we know why. We have the United Nations document. Banks, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and others are financing this. Ken Lay of the Enron fame in the mid-'90s with Al Gore, this is on congressional record, in testimony, came up with the plan of a new form of derivatives that we've seen in banking that's caused all the problems based on carbon credits. And so it allows a select group of banks and brokerage firms to start buying and selling carbon credits on the world market and to create a whole new Ponzi scheme. And we also have the new head of the European Union on record in his inaugural speech last week admittedly saying that global government is being formed and that the main tax for global government over the entire planet through global governance will be the global carbon tax.
The purpose of science is the search for knowledge, truth, and a greater understanding of the world around us.